The House will come to order. Today, the pledge will be led by Alexis Parenti, Francesca Parenti, I think also known as Lexi and Frankie, from Elbert School District, nieces of Representative Parenti.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Schiebel, please call the roll.
Representatives Amabile, Armagost, Bacon, Byrd, Representative Byrd, Bockenfeld, Basenecker, Bottoms, Representative Bradfield is excused, Bradley, Brown, Catlin, Doherty, Representative Doherty,
Excused.
DeGraff, Degree Kennedy, Dixon, Duran, English, Epps, Evans, Frizzell, Froelich, Garcia, Gonzalez Gutierrez, Hamrick, Hartsook, Herod, Holtorf, Judah, Joseph, Kip, Representative Leader is excused, Lindsay, Rep. Lindsay, Rep. Lindsay's excused, Linstead, Luck, Lukens, Lynch, Mabry, Marshall, Martinez, Morrow, Representative Morrow,
Excused.
McCormick, McLaughlin, Michelson Janae, Ortiz, Parenti, Puglisi, Ricks, Sharbini, Sirota, Snyder, Soper, Story, Taggart, Titone, Valdez, Velasco, Vigil, Weinberg, Weissman, Wilford, Representative Wilford, Wilson, Winter, Woodrow, Young, and Madam Speaker.
Here. With 62 present, 3 excused, we do have a quorum. Representative Vigil.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I have a very serious order of business, and it is my first time, so I'd ask that you please make it worth my while however you choose to vote. Madam Speaker, I move that the Journal of Friday, February 24th, 2023 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Members, you've heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Well done, Rep. Vigil. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Announcements and introductions, members. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to recognize some fourth grade students that are touring the Capitol today from my district. Students from Fireside Elementary are here to learn all about our government and our Capitol, and I just want to welcome them and thank them for being here.
Excellent. Welcome. Representative Tatone.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was given permission by the Majority Leader to be excused on Monday, March 6th, if I have to stay for jury duty.
So approved. Thank you for your service. Representative Parenti.
Good morning, colleagues. If I can have your attention really quickly, I want to introduce my guests. My mother, my brother, my sister-in-law, and my two adorable nieces are in the gallery with us today. Please welcome them. Thank you.
They did a very good job with our Pledge of Allegiance. Representative McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today we will be meeting for Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee at 1:30 in room 107, and we'll be hearing House Bill 1096 and House Bill 1066. We'll see you there.
Representative Snyder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And if it's Monday, it must be finance. She's not listening. So, folks, we're meeting in room 112 at 1:30. We'll be hearing House Bill 1047, House Bill 1061, and House Bill 1189. Thank you.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee will meet tomorrow at 1:30 LSBA to hear four bills, 1048, 1175, 1184, and 1190.
Thank you. Representative Woodrow.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members of the House State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee, we will be meeting at 1:30 p.m. in the Old State Library to hear House Bills 1185, 1148, 1149, and 1170.
Thank you. Any other announcements and introductions? Rep. Soper and Taggart.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and it's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
Well, members, I don't know if earlier you saw a lot of students milling about in the lobby, but that's because the Springboard Fellowship between Fort Lewis and Colorado Mesa University are here, and that's the first-generation students, meaning they're the first in their family to ever attend college. They will be up in the gallery, but we've heard they're being detained by the Attorney General right now.
Representative Taggart.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
I just, we have 18 students from CMU here today that are first-generation students, and half of them are some of my students. So I kidded them this morning that they're due back at CMU to be doing their classwork as compared to being here in the Capitol, and I do wish our Attorney General would let them come in and sit in the gallery, but thank you.
Thank you. Any additional announcements, introductions? Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to proceed out of order for consideration of memorials.
Seeing no objection, members, we will proceed out of order for consideration of memorials. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Joint Memorial 002.
Senate Joint Memorial 2 by Senator Roberts, also Representative Lukens, memorializing former Senator John Jack Taylor.
Representative Lukens.
I move Senate Joint Memorial 002 and ask that it be read at length.
Mr. Schiebel, please read our memorial.
Whereas John Jack W. Taylor, the former senator, departed this life on April 22nd, 2020 at the age of 84. And whereas Senator Taylor was born in Chicago, Illinois on November 22nd, 1935 to Harvey and Pauline Taylor. And whereas Senator Taylor grew up on a farm in Auburn, Iowa with his brother Robert before attending Iowa State University. And whereas in college, Senator Taylor was in the Navy ROTC program and played baseball, in which he excelled, being named all-conference at second base and playing for the 1957 Iowa State University varsity baseball team that won the Big 7 Conference Championship and placed third in the College World Series in Omaha, Nebraska. And whereas after college, Senator Taylor joined the Navy and served on an icebreaker ship that participated in the International Geophysical Year operation in Antarctica, an international scientific project that lasted from July 1st, 1957 to December 31st, 1958. And whereas after serving in the Navy, Senator Taylor moved to New Orleans, Louisiana, where he worked for Boeing Aerospace on the Apollo moon landing project. And whereas Senator Taylor also spent time in Kuwait helping to build and staff the country's first oil refinery before moving to Steamboat Springs, Colorado in 1969, where he established a real estate business and became a partner in a small coal mining operation at Mount Harris. And whereas after moving to Steamboat Springs, Senator Taylor met his wife, Geneva, whom he married in 1973. And whereas Senator Taylor and Geneva had one daughter, Vicky, and two grandchildren, Brianna and Dakin. And whereas Senator Taylor served on several boards and commissions, including the Soda Creek Ditch Board, before running for the state legislature. And whereas in 1992, Senator Taylor was elected to the Colorado House of Representatives, where he served from 1993 to 2000, followed by an 8-year term in the Colorado Senate from 2001 to 2008. And whereas Senator Taylor was a well-respected and well-liked statesman whose legislative career focused on support for the military, wildlife, water, and telecommunications. And whereas Senator Taylor sponsored 252 bills, memorials, and resolutions in his 16 years in the legislature, 201 of which were enacted, including bills on voting, tuition assistance for the National Guard, petroleum storage tanks, creation of the Colorado Tourism Office, waste tire recycling, and enterprise zones, among many others. And whereas Senator Taylor served on the Agriculture and Business Committees in both the House and Senate, and was a member of the Legislative Audit Committee for 12 years. He also served on joint water committees for 10 years, the Joint Police Officers and Firefighters Pension Reform Commission for 5 years, and several interim committees throughout his tenure. And whereas Senator Taylor felt strongly that it was important to fight for Western Slope water, vowing to protect water rights and property rights. And whereas Senator Taylor was instrumental in providing better telecommunications access in Northwest Colorado. And whereas Senator Taylor also loved working irrigation ditches in his neighborhood and mowing the neighborhood's Strawberry Park roads and some neighbors' driveways with his John Deere tractor. And whereas, after serving in the General Assembly, one of Senator Taylor's main activities was participating in the Republican Party, chairing the Routt County Republican Party twice, and partnering with his wife, Geneva, to chair various Republican campaigns. And whereas Senator Taylor and Geneva were a team, two community leaders who complemented each other and were very strong supporters of the community. And whereas Geneva survived Senator Taylor, but passed away just 6 months later on October 15th, 2020. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 74th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that in the death of Senator Jack Taylor, the people of the state of Colorado have lost a devoted public servant and an outstanding citizen, and that we, the members of the 74th General Assembly, pay tribute to Jack for his years of dedicated public service and do hereby extend our deep and heartfelt sympathy to the members of his family.
Representative Lukens.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Taylor was also from Steamboat Springs, and he made significant contributions to our community as well as the Western Slope and the entire state of Colorado. We are especially grateful for his dedication to water issues, telecommunications, and the promotion of tourism, and we are grateful overall for our public service. But my colleague from the Western Slope was his former legislative aide and has a few things to share as well.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I had the honor of being Senator Jack Taylor's aide in 2005, and I just want to share a couple of quick stories with you just to illustrate the type of man that he was. I remember our very first day. I was a scrawny college kid from Mesa State College. We went out to eat, this is pre-Amendment 41, with the Cattlemans at a fancy steakhouse. Looking at the menu, I realized I couldn't afford anything, so I ordered the side salad. Senator Taylor ordered a giant porterhouse steak, cut it in half, put half on my plate, and said, "No aide of mine is ever going to starve while working for me." Another story that really illustrates the love of his wife, he called one day, and he was in a meeting with Governor Owens, and they were working on some major water bill at the time, and his wife was wanting to know about snow tires. and I delayed getting him the message until after the meeting. And he had a temper like a lion as well. And he said to me, Matt, I don't care if I'm meeting with the Pope, the President, or even the Governor. If my wife calls, you interrupt that meeting because she is the most important person in my life, and I love her dearly. I learned that and certainly respect that as well. I found him to be not only a boss, but he became a mentor and later on a friend, but he was a statesman and a gentleman. And every year during Military Appreciation Day, he would wear his naval uniform, and he could still fit into it, which was pretty amazing. And he looked so sharp that many people thought he was an actor when he walked into the building. But he was someone who was very nice. He focused on Western Slope policy and was a champion for Colorado as a whole. And it's an honor to be able to say a few words here today in memory of him, and I wish his family our condolences.
Any further discussion on Senate Joint Memorial? Assistant Minority Leader Puglisi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will be brief. I met Jack Taylor when I first started as a county commissioner, and he sat me down and told me everything I needed to know about how to actually represent my people. And I think that part of the reason I'm such a leader today is because of what he taught me when I was so young in the process. So I'm really grateful to him and appreciate this tribute. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of Senate Joint Memorial 002. Is there any objection to a voice vote? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Senate Joint Memorial 2 is adopted. Members, we will be opening the machine for co-sponsors. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine. Please close the machine. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to proceed out of order for the consideration of third reading and final passage.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1100.
House Bill 1100 by Representatives Ricks and Garcia, also Senators Jaquez Lewis and Gonzalez, concerning restrictions on governmental participation in civil immigration detention.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1100 on third reading and final passage.
Members, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1100 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Story, is the machine not working? Representative Story, how do you vote? Representative Story, can you give us a voice vote? Oh, we got it. Excellent. Please close the machine. With 41 aye, 22 no, and 2 excused, House Bill 1100 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1099.
House Bill 1099 by Representatives Vigil and Weissman, also Senators Fields and Exum, concerning tenant screening documentation for residential leases.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1099 on third reading, final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1099 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 44 aye, 19 no, and 2 excused, House Bill 1099 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1095.
House Bill 1095 by Representatives Woodrow and Lindsay, also Senator Henriksen, concerning prohibiting the inclusion of certain provisions in written rental agreements.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1095 on third reading, final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1095 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 42 aye, 21 no, 2 excused, House Bill 1095 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1062.
House Bill 1062 by Representative Morrow, also Senator Henriksen, concerning the authority of a metropolitan district to levy a sales tax with voter approval for the purpose of providing parks or recreational facilities or programs.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1062 on third reading, final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1062 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 55 aye, 8 no, 2 excused, House Bill 1062 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1115.
House Bill 1115 by Representatives Mabry and Velasco, also Senator Rodriguez, concerning the repeal of statutory provisions prohibiting local governments from enacting rent control on private residential property or a private residential housing unit.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1115 on third reading, final passage.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is a privilege to serve with you.
A privilege to serve with you.
Thank you. I'll try not to get gavelled today. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. From the consent of the governed. So let's look at the Constitution that we all took an oath to and that we all swore. Amendment number 5, no person shall be held to answer for capital or otherwise infamous crime unless a presentation of indictment of grand jury when in actual time of service, probably not that part, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be put twice in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any crime, case, or witness against himself, nor to be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law. Nor shall private property be taken for public use or good intentions, I added that part, without just compensation. Let's look at 14. Section 14, Amendment 14, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of any citizen of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, nor deprive any person within its jurisdiction to equal protection of the law. So what do we have in this? Well, let's see. First of all, it's just another demonstration that there is no problem that the government can't make worse with a solution. We have talked ad nauseum about the problems that are created with a bill like this. Rent control fails 100% of the time, or you could say rent control succeeds every 100% of the time. It just depends on whether what your metrics are. So let's say it succeeds every 100% of the time. Let's see, what does it succeed in? Well, let's see, it succeeds in driving down property values. It succeeds in driving down rental units available. It succeeds in driving down property taxes. It succeeds in driving out businesses. So all of these things can only be assumed to be the proper result of a bill that has rent control. What is one of the provisions? Well, the main provision in this bill is that everything under age of 15 years old, certificate of occupancy less than 15 years old, will be exempted. That should tell you right now that it's a bad bill. That should tell you right now that, what does it say? Nor deny any persons within its jurisdiction to equal protection of the law. What you're doing automatically with this bill is you are setting up people with different homes, less than 15 years old and greater than 15 years old, with less than equal protection under the law. Not just less than equal protection of the law, but grossly less than equal protection under the law. If the house is less than 50, what does that do? Oh, that would allow developers to continue to develop. That's true. That's true, and they can continue their massive political contributions. Also true. Those are things that we need to protect as legislators. But it is not equal protection under the law, and it is a gross abridgment of equal protection under the law. So what does rent control aspire to do? Because it does it 100% of the time. Well, the models ranged from 2%. The expected change in rental values across metropolitan areas, according to the models, range from 2% in Chicago and Portland to 5% in Denver, 9% in Seattle. The effect on new compartment construction would also be substantial, but it varies significantly across metropolitan areas. Seattle would see a reduction in construction of 1,739 units per year, with 779 fewer units constructed annually in Denver, 320 per year in Chicago, and 233 fewer in Portland. The models estimate that an annual maintenance spending would fall by $5.9 million in Seattle, $5.4 million in Chicago, $4.5 million in Denver, and $2.7 million in Portland. The total rental income lost for apartment owners would be significant. The model estimates that total annual income loss would be $33 million in Seattle, $24 million in Chicago, $23 million in Denver, $10 million in Portland. These loss estimates include both the income loss due to restricting rents and the income lost from foregone construction. The projected income reductions logically translate into declines in the value of apartment properties. The model output estimates an aggregate loss of property value of $213 million in Portland, $462 million in Denver, $487 million in Chicago, $655 million in Chicago. Now, legislators, if you don't care about the decrease in property values, I'm sure the loss of tax revenue that's related to those property values might get your attention. That might be the only thing that gets your attention, but that should get your attention. If property value losses are realized in the assessment of property, then they would also be realized in lower property tax collections. Taking the property loss estimate from the low discount rate model and assuming that property assessments follow the market value, annual property tax revenue losses would be more than $6 million annually in Chicago, with losses more than $5 million in Seattle and Portland, and $3.5 million annually in Denver. Of course, then we'll just take it out of the budgets for things like schools and roads, and then we'll tell everybody that we need to raise taxes for the children. That is how things are done. Economists are overwhelmingly agree that price controls on rent are inefficient, they're counterproductive, and they lead to serious negative impacts for the housing markets. Again, these results should be considered axiomatic, and so they can only be considered intentional. Rent control removes the financial incentive for developers to build new rental houses. We talked last week about how the rental, it becomes more cost advantageous in these places where rent control is tried, because it always fails, that soon after that you find that buildings go into dilapidation, like you find in New York. This could be considered a slum production bill. That would be probably a better name for it. At some point are left vacant because they can't be maintained, or the property, again, the property that they're on becomes more valuable than the rental unit itself, and then those units are torn down. Quick bulldozer. So the good intentions of this bill to stabilize the rent, and we heard last week that there was apparently some promises made that this was going to cut people's rent in half, which it won't. And we've heard last week how every place this happens, that there are fewer units, prices go up, and this succeeds 100% of the time. 100% of the time, these are the goals of rent control. These are the goals that happen. So rent control costs local governments critical revenue as the assessed value of rent control properties decline. Of course, then we'll just go back and we'll ask for more money for the children. We'll have some bleeding heart music or something like that, and we'll say that we have to raise taxes for schools because we gutted the availability. Rent control laws are not income targeted, allowing anyone with income along the income spectrum to take advantage of restrictions regardless of need. Housing development, rehabilitation, and maintenance generate significant economic values, benefits in terms of job creation, wages, and overall economic growth. These things are not going to be, are not going to be done. You're creating a disparate application of the law. You're creating multiple magnitudes of adverse effects, and I sincerely urge, in line with your oath to protect the Constitution and preserve the Constitution of the United States, that you would consider its values. You would not set up unequal protection under the law, that you would not deprive somebody of their
Representative
of their
DeGraff,
property.
you have 1 minute remaining.
Well, then I will talk very slowly for the last little bit that I have, but I will wrap up my my comments with that. Please value the Constitution. Please value the property of your constituents. Please value the tax base that they are working so hard to and please do not make this problem work by paving the road to hell with good intentions. Thank you.
Representative Taggart.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to talk about 3 issues on this that have to do with local governments. And almost always, you're going to find me up here talking about local government and how we need to respect the decisions that are made in local government and protect those. This bill is packaged to help local government. But here are 3 very serious problems. First and foremost, most of us live in areas where we have commuting cities or towns immediately adjacent to our municipality. In the case of Grand Junction, we have two cities that are on our borders, and we have an unincorporated area as well, which is the county. If this goes through, what happens is not local control, but we're virtually dictating to all those local governments that you have to enact this rent control. And I'll stress, this is rent control, not rent stabilization. And the problem with that is if one community decides not to do it, we are manipulating the market because people are going to go to where that cheapest rent is. And you might say, or ask the question, Rick, what's the problem of that? Well, then they're not living close to where they're working. They're not living close to their school systems, but rather they're making a decision based on rent control. All that adds to is more driving and more air pollution. That's problematic. The second thing is we are headed down a path that we have not given them a basis in this bill. And hopefully there could be an amendment if it goes through in the Senate. But how does a municipality make this work when there's no fair market value built into this bill such that you can build those increases off of? Are they supposed to guess that number? What are they supposed to do to know what fair market value is? For this to work, there has to be fair market value. And last but not least, this is an unfunded mandate. Our municipalities are not set up right now, other than perhaps Denver. None of the Western Slope communities are set up to do this. So they're going to have to hire staff to be able to manage this. They're going to have the consultants, that being appraisers, to do this. And we haven't put anything aside to help them with budgets that are extremely tight. I don't know if that's the case here in the Front Range, but the Western Slope communities are barely eking by right now with a lack of oil and gas tax revenues. And we've just dumped another responsibility. So I ask you to consider, is this really local control, or is this legislature forcing something on local governments that they're not at all prepared for? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Winter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. Happy Monday morning. I'm here to speak again. Over the weekend, I received more and more emails about this bill, all the way from Pueblo West to Lamar, people asking me and urging me to vote no on this. I said on Friday, and I'll say it again, there's a lot of landlords that are reaching out to me. Those of us in Southeast Colorado, we live by a code, and they're reaching out to me saying we feel like we're being vilified, we're being demonized, and we feel like that the investments that we made in our future, whether we invested in these properties, and I want to reiterate this again, for a second income, or if we invested it into these properties to help with our retirement, we feel like we're being punished. Like I said, these landlords said they have Thanksgiving, they have Christmas with some of their tenants, and they are very good people that are trying to make a difference. We live by a code, like I said, in southeastern Colorado. We look out for each other. And there are also the economic issues that we see with this. Numerous places that this has taken place. We've seen we've seen slowing of growth, slowing of building, less tax revenue come in as properties are evaluated at a lower price. And I think we're trying to put a fix on something that can't be fixed other than with the free market. I hear that all the time too. This is a direct attack on private property in the free market. And how, if we stifle the free market, how are we actually going to get the growth that we're looking for in these communities? So I urge you to take a look at this one more time, please. There are ill effects to this. I understand that there's something that you're trying to do with this bill to help people out, but you also have to look at the effects that roll over into the people that are trying to make a living or the people that have invested in these properties to try to supplement their income. Once again, I ask you for a no vote. I ask you to look at this again. Thank Thank you.
Representative Hartsook.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On Friday, we were talking about control and a philosophical difference here. A couple things that I think we need to pay attention to on this is if you are a business or just a simple property owner and you're in different communities, how do you adjust? How do you deal with all the different laws? Now, some people might say, well, if you're a business, then you have the ability to do that. The point's not whether you have the ability. The point is this the right thing to do? Do we implement and create a situation that across the state of Colorado, there's a multitude of ordinances that could be in effect, and you have to adjust to those in different communities? That then starts creating more and more chaos out there. Is that what we call fair and equitable? Is that what we call equal to the property owners and the tenants? If they want to move and they have to adjust to a different community, the idea is that things should stay fairly simple as people move and as people buy property, and not create so much havoc as you move around. How many of us like to have things upset on us if we had to move? I mean, 26 years in the Army, when I moved, the Army took care of it. I didn't have to worry about the details of where I was going. I just had to show up. If you're not in that situation and you have to do the moving and all the coordination on yourself, then you've got to adjust a whole different community. Uniform controls, if you're going to sit in, just take my district down in Parker. I've got rural and I've got the central part of the city. I've got unincorporated areas and I've got apartments in downtown. If they pass jurisdiction and applies across the board, it's very different landlords, very different tenants, very different ways that will impact people. This does not help the situation. This does not encourage the growth. This does not encourage development. It doesn't even encourage good business. The more and more we hammer away at businesses, and even at this point, if the state says, oh, I'm going to give it to local control, but we are creating a situation that creates more regulations, and that's what's strangling businesses. That's what's stifling growth. That's what's stifling housing. It's what's stifling people and the ability to move and find a better job. All these things that come into play, it creates a patchwork across the state. I don't think that is the intent, or certainly should not be, of what we're trying to achieve here. I would encourage you to look at all the second, third order effects that will come out of this versus simply what the upfront point of the bill is trying to do. It is those second and third order effects that will come back to haunt us, will haunt businesses, will haunt communities, and will haunt the very people that we're trying to help. I urge you to vote no on this, and I thank you for your time.
Representative Bottoms.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is a pleasure to serve with you.
And a pleasure to serve with you.
Good morning, General Assembly. So, a few things again about this. I discussed a few of these last week, but to put this in perspective, Thomas Sowell writes quite a bit about rent control, and he has a lot of information that he gives us. And one of the things that he walks through in quite a few of his books in dealing with rent control is that when this started in the 1920s, that it, again, every time it's ever happened, it's failed. Every single time it's happened, it's failed. But one of the things that he showed in a few of his books is, specifically in New York City, one of the things that happened with introduction of rent control was what we call slumlords. Slums and slumlords came from this as part of this. Now, there's a few other factors involved with that, but rent control contributed greatly to this because when you stop the rent, all the things that we talked about last week and all the things that have already been brought up here is when you stop the ability for the actual business owner, the actual property owner to be able to have a legitimate rent, a legitimate free market value produced rent, then you stop them from being able to do a bunch of other things, which is taking care of the buildings, taking care of the property around it, all that kind of stuff. Now, when that happens, I talked a little bit about that this last week, but to expound a little bit here on this, you actually turn some of these, and then it propagates and expands out quite quickly into other property owners becoming slumlords. And the concept of a slumlord is they have a very low-end, cheap product that they are presenting to the market, to the renter. Because why? They have not been able to take care of it, can't keep it up because these things have been controlled. And these were the direct reasons why, about 40 years later, when we're coming out of World War II, that a lot of these rent controls were taken down by the same legislative groups that were putting them in place in the first place, which is exactly what's going to happen here too. It may not be the same people sitting in this house right now, but it will be this same house that will come back 20, 30 years from now and have to tear down this horrible thing that we have forced upon the people of Colorado and forced upon the property owners of Colorado. It happened in the 70s also, by the way. Started it again by the time we get into late 80s, early 90s. We're seeing this where now we have to come back by legislative control and take some of these parameters off. This is how slumlords come into existence, is they have a very cheap product because they have not been allowed to upkeep that, and they've been controlled by legislative fiat that says you have to keep your rent at whatever, and we keep discussing the fact that this bill will give local municipalities the ability to lower that rent. Not just some kind of restricted or whatever. That is not what this bill does. It is a rent control bill. It says it in the title. And so if we argue that it's a kind of stabilization or something of rent, then that means we're not even discussing the bill, because the bill says it's a rent control bill. Now with that means you're lowering these things, you're developing these slumlords, and then some of the things I talked about last week also, about that then you're producing you're basically producing an apartment complex mafia mentality. You're allowing the criminal aspect to control these things. We know that slumlords, the reason we call them slumlords is because their practices are not good. Their practices are built around what? Controlling the people. The rent's low, but they don't have anything within that building that is healthy or productive. And Thomas Sowell goes over this pages and pages and pages in his books, where now you're actually developing a setting where the people no longer have what they were promised to have. Yeah, their rent may be lower, but what they could have got equivalently with that same rent has now gone way downhill, but they're trapped in these slums and the slumlords know it. So you got people on waiting list, crime goes up astronomically. These are mostly lower income and minority people that this is done to. I showed you all the statistics of that last week, that the minorities are the worst, the most affected in the worst way group in these kind of mentalities. And you can look anywhere in any major city, not even rent-controlled cities, but anywhere in any major city, the slumlords have the control because the people are at their mercy. And we are introducing a bill that will develop that within Denver specifically and other places, but specifically in Denver, we're going to develop a context where there is such a thing as a slumlord being in control. The people are trapped, they cannot get out, and it's all because of us. Because we feel deeply, and these people are being hurt because we're not actually looking at a lot of the information when it comes to how business works, how the market works, how rent control destabilizes all of that. That we're hindering the ability for people to get good, affordable housing. And here's something that we keep coming up against, that we have not answered this question. And this bill only hurts it. It does not help it. There's not a positive effect on this one question. And this question is, once we institute this law, how many more places to rent are added? I'm saying tomorrow morning, how many new apartments will be available because we controlled the rent on existing apartments? How many new places to live? Because that's actually the bigger problem than just rent in Colorado. It's all the new people coming in and cannot find places, which drives up the rent. So now we just lower the control of rent, but there's no effect on the individual that's needing to come here and live. We cannot find the housing, and this bill does nothing but take housing off. And one of the representatives up here earlier said this. I have also gotten many, many emails about this. And this is basically the thing. I'm saying in the 150 to 200 emails that people that own rental properties now are saying, if this bill goes into effect, I will pull my property off the market and will no longer have ability for somebody to rent this out. And I'm a very small person in the big scheme of how many people are affected by this room. So there are tens and tens of thousands of people that are potentially affected and saying, I will not rent property anymore. It's not going to happen. The state is making it impossible for me as a renter, unless I own 5 apartment buildings. I can't afford to do this. You're going to put me out of business. I will pull those rental properties off. And so tomorrow, not only do we have less, not any added, but we're also going to have less, and that's going to be at the hands of everybody that votes yes on this. You will have that. You will have the ability to put out many, many people out of their rental properties. You have the power to force them out of their rental properties by voting in a positive way on this bill. And so my suggestion is let's not do that. Let's keep people in their rental properties. Let's try to help take constraints off so we can add more rental properties rather than immediately overnight taking all of these off the market so people suffer. We are going to cause people to be homeless because of this bill. And that's not some kind of guess or subjectiveness, guys. This is directly from people telling us we will no longer have our properties rented out because of the control that the state is now going to offer for us to be limited in how we run our business, how we rent to people, what kind of property we can have, whether we can develop that property, whether we can make it good. And that says nothing of the stuff that I talked ad nauseum Friday about how many developers are saying, not small rentals, but developers are now saying, I'm not going to do this. I am not going to build these buildings. I am putting this on hold because I can't build something that is just a gift to the people of Colorado.
Representative Bottoms, 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. I cannot build this stuff with the idea that I can't rent it for a fair market value. I build a brand new building and all of a sudden I'm being told you can only rent it for this value, which guts the concept of what a market is in America. We build stuff to make money. We don't build stuff to be a gift. They have to have money returned to them or these things shut down. So I strongly urge you to have a common sense vote here and not put people out on the street. Please vote no against this bill.
Representative Bradley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, we talk about following the science. We heard that all through the pandemic. Follow the science, follow the science. We have 32 states that have banned rent control. We have our own governor, Polis, that is opposed to rent control. He said he has long opposed rent control for 2 good reasons. As a protege and lifelong friend of Reaganomics, economics Art Laffer, he has an above average acumen for economics among fellow Democrats. And 2, he knows it does more harm than good for people who need to rent, and he seems to genuinely care about them. We have 93% of economists who have gone on record to say that rent control does not work. We have massive amounts of stakeholders that oppose this bill, so who are we listening to when we're talking about rent control? Because we're not listening to them and we're not listening to the science. Respected economist Jay Parsons says science and history show why rent control does not work and hurts the affordability of rental housing, and he has 14 different reasons listed. Rent control is rare because history shows us it doesn't work as intended. Rent control is a short-term fix for current residents at expense of long-term affordability for a much broader population. You might argue we'll exempt new construction from rent control, so it's okay, but the science says otherwise. The science of economics also tells us that rent controls not only limit new supply, but also lead to removal of existing supply, New York being a case in point. That science also tells us that rent control provides benefit to a share of households, but at an enormous cost, one being inability to fund maintenance. Rent control often leads to poorly maintained, outdated housing and battles between tenants and landlords over upkeep. One important note that is often overlooked: rent control primarily benefits wealthier households who do not need the benefit. Case in point, former New York Mayor Ed Koch for decades kept a $475 a month bargain in high-end Greenwood Village, which meant he and many others received benefits others needed more, which means wealthier households are either squatting in affordable units or squandering benefits that could otherwise be spent on lower-income households in need. Historically, price controls in the United States were associated with the Soviet Union, which made it a red flag for many Americans. For Soviets, price controls led to severe supply shortages, a runaway black market, and depression. But 3 decades later, memories and lessons are fading. Rent control proponents point to Europe as models, but fail to point out the resulting disaster of a supply shortage. Read this quote from an economist in Sweden: 5% of the entire population is on a waiting list for a rental. In Toronto, rent control sharply reduced new construction to only pricey units, I talked about this on Friday, and gave way to a surge in for-sale condos as shadow alternatives bought by small investors and rented out individually, ultimately making affordability worse. In Cambridge, Massachusetts, research showed that the city benefited from the removal of rent controls in the 1990s. A Harvard professor noted more supply, more maintenance, upgrades, and less crime. In an IMG survey of economists, only 2% said rent controls in places like New York and San Francisco had a positive impact on affordable housing. That means 98% said no. Opposition to rent control is not a partisan issue. Economists on both sides of the aisle oppose it, from right-wing Milton Friedman to left-wing Gunnar Myrdal, both Nobel Peace winners. Myrdal stated rent control has in certain Western countries constituted maybe the worst example of poor planning by governments lacking courage and vision. The science of economics tells us the best solution to affordable housing is supply. Harvard's Ed Glazer, the most natural tool towards affordability is supply, and to make sure they were making it easy enough to build moderate-cost rental apartment buildings in these cities. But not ironically, most cities with rent control or that are seriously discussing it are themselves guilty of making it way too difficult to build housing, which makes what does go through get more expensive. In Douglas County, people in my county can't even afford to live in Douglas County. Their kids go to school there, but they don't live there. This bill will make it much worse for them, and I agree with all the other representatives that have told you the landlords in my district are going to sell their properties and they're going to leave people homeless. I strongly urge a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
Representative Mabry. Representative Velasco.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, and we urge and I vote.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. As a rural representative, I think about the problem. I think about the proposed solution to the problem, because I will tell you, many of us are good-hearted and want to help people. We want to help people. We want to get people in apartments. We want to get people in housing across the state. In my rural towns, we have shortages of housing. It's hard to believe, but in my little hometown of Akron, a single-wide trailer house was sold for over $100,000 because of the non-availability of housing. So how do we fix it? Well, ladies and gentlemen, in the conundrum that we face with respect to rent and affordability of housing, I don't believe rent control is the solution, but I'm going to tell you what is. Supply and demand. If we have high demand, we have low supply. So ladies and gentlemen, you want to fix this problem? We need to build, build, build. We need to build housing. We need to build apartments. We need to build multi-level apartments. When I was stationed overseas in the Republic of Korea, a small country that has an enormous population, you know what I saw? That amazed me. I saw high-rise apartments that one building could hold the entire population of my hometown. Now, these Korean planners were smart. I'm talking incredibly intelligent in developing. And they knew that they had to meet the demand of their growing population with solutions. And they did it with 15-story high-rise apartments. And in some cases, there were 10 of these units in a cluster. They would hold about 1,500 people, families, say. So one location, 15,000. I was amazed at what I saw. But we don't do it here in Colorado. We're not building. And this gets me to my point, and I hope I don't run out of time, Madam Speaker, because this is the most important thing that I've heard. A person who's a developer in Denver said, you know what, I want to build. I want to build, but the city and county of Denver has 5 different departments with 5 different permits that are on 5 different schedules, and they jack me around. And when I don't get this permit filled with this particular requirement, then they charge me a $900 to $1,000 fine. And the one department doesn't talk to the other department, and it's duplicitous fines. And he says, it is driving me crazy. I can't develop. The environment won't let me build. And with that type of environment, you will not build fast enough to solve this problem, Denver. Now I'm a hick from the sticks. I get that. It's really not my place to speak to this. But the message I want to tell you, if you want to solve this, if the bill sponsors want to solve this, and I say this from the bottom of my heart, because I care about people, then you need to build, and tear down the barriers that preclude us from building across this state. But wait a minute. They say, oh no, we can't have that because that's going to change our look or change whatever. We've got restrictions on heights, and we want to see those beautiful mountains. But I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, and I've said this every year I've been up here, you got to put people first. Put people first, Colorado, and let's start building housing units. When you oversupply the market to overexceed the demand, you know what happens? The price is going to go down. Let's do that. And I'm talking in the mountain areas. I'm talking in the West Slope. I'm talking in the East Slope. Everywhere. Let's build to meet demand. Let's run legislation that fixes that problem. Now I say build responsibly, but open this up for building and development. And I'm saying vertical. Vertical development everywhere in Colorado that has a housing shortfall. And create conditions, run legislation. For the love of God, let's help ourselves, because in 10 years, this problem isn't getting better. This is a short-term solution to a long-term problem. And maybe it's not a solution, because there's so many things that say this is not a good solution. So let's go back, irregardless of what you do with this bill, ladies and gentlemen, let's go back and try to find real solutions for Colorado. And let's use more of a supply and demand process, a thought process that helps us build. Build in the mountains, so those workers can live in an apartment unit that maybe is supported by the very companies that benefit, like the ski companies in those municipalities. Build in the cities. Break down these barriers, city and county of Denver. You want to fix the problem, let's get busy. Take the regulations and adjust them, modify them, synchronize what we're doing. Now, the bill sponsor here is from Denver. This is his hometown. This is his backyard. But you got to listen. This is not going to solve this. But what I propose, if you start working on initiatives that help others help themselves, like the city and county of Denver, at the state level, then they can solve their problems. Madam Speaker, I'm going to finish with this. Colorado, you need to build. And And you need to create conditions that allow for that building, building, and building. And that's not only through regulations, that's through labor, that's through supply chain, to minimize supply chain disruptions. That's to create labor markets that allow the labor to come to Colorado that can help us build and create conditions that create more demand in housing in every sector. Thank you for your time. And I sincerely mean that to the bill sponsors from the bottom of my heart. If you want to solve this and you listen to what I'm asking for and we create those conditions, things can change in the next 10 years. Without that, with the growth of population projected for Colorado, you are not going to catch up unless we change the calculus of what it is to develop in the great state of Colorado. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I got my first black eye when I was 3 years old. Why? Because I had sat down next to my dad, unbeknownst to him, while he was changing a tire. And he threw the iron rod, and it hit me right in the eye. You see, I was a daddy's girl, and I loved working with him in his shop. He was a mechanic, and he was always restoring a car or fixing a race car. And I wanted to help. My aunt, thinking that she was doing the whole family a service, bought me my own set of tools. The problem was that though they were pink and pretty, they were plastic and useless and actually assisting in any project that my dad had before him. It made the whole endeavor futile for me. It frustrated me as I was sitting there trying to work on particular projects that I could not actually make amends to work on. I couldn't actually do anything. It was all a show. I think what many on my side of the aisle are trying to convey today is that this particular tool has long since been taken out of the toolboxes across not only this nation, but around the globe, because it hasn't shown itself effective. It's been futile and frustrating. And I understand that there is a bit of confusion about what this bill actually does, because it doesn't impose statewide rent control, and some of our constituents think that it does, right? Instead, what it does is it places a tool that is plastic and unfortunately ineffective back into the boxes of our local governments, with the impression that it has been somehow revived because the data has been different, with the impression given to our local governments and to the people of this state that somehow it's a valid tool that will get us where we want to go. Now, it's true, many communities, many municipalities, many counties may not choose to take that tool and implement it in their jurisdiction. But those counties that do won't see the success that they're hoping for. Moreover, it will have negative impacts on the communities around. I think every single person in this room is committed to making housing affordable. We all want people to live in homes where they are able to do life with the people that they love at a fair and reasonable price, where they don't have to expend 30 or 40 or 50 or 60% of their income, where they don't have to worry about having 4 or 5 or 6 different roommates in this one building. We all want that. We want the American dream to be passed on to the next generation. But putting a tool in the hands of a youngster to make her feel like she's doing something wasn't actually helpful to me as a little girl. It would have been better to put that heavy ratchet in my hand and force me to use it until I actually was able to do something, even though that was harder. The problems before us are hard, but we have so much evidence that says this tool is not going to solve the problem. Please, Don't put this plastic tool in the hands of our local governments and further exacerbate the problem. Let's find real tools that will work in providing real solutions. Thank you.
Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My co-sponsor from the Western Slope and I emphatically urge you to vote yes on HB 1115.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1115 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 40 aye, 24 no, and 1 excused, House Bill 1115 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1157.
House Bill 1157 by Representatives Joseph and Weinberg, also Senators Exum and Gardner, concerning the Uniform Unregulated Child Custody Transfer Act.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1157 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1157. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote.
Other way. This way.
Please close the machine. With 64 ayes, 0 no, 1 excused, House Bill 1157 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 23.
Senate Bill 23 by Senators Rich and Marchman, also Representatives Holtorf and Hamrick, concerning CPR training for high school students.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 23 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 23, third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 61 aye, 3 no, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 23 is adopted. Co-sponsors.
Good morning. Congrats. Congrats, you guys.
Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1156.
House Bill 1156 by Representatives Taggart and Young, also Senators Colker and Pelton R., concerning modernization of the Public Airport Authority Act.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1156 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1156 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 64 ayes, 0 no, 1 excused, House Bill 1156 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. That concludes third readings. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the following bills be added to the special orders calendar at 11:23 a.m. Senate Bill 46, Senate Bill 73, House Bill 1126, House Bill 1172, Senate Bill 51, Senate Bill 48, and House Bill 1025.
Seeing no objection, the bills listed by the Majority Leader will be added to the special orders calendar at 11:23 a.m. Representative Wilford. Members, you have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, the House will now resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of special orders. Representative Wilford will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bill will be read by title unless there's a request for reading a bill at length. Committee reports are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and on your iPads. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the majority leader, and the coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 46.
Senate Bill 46 by Senator Winter F., also Representative Duran, concerning the calculation of a covered individual's average weekly wage for paid family and medical leave benefits.
Madam Majority Leader Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 46.
To the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Colorado voters passed the Family and Medical Leave Insurance Act through Proposition 118 in 2020, with 57.75% of the vote. Through the family program, Coloradans will soon have paid leave when they have a serious health condition, welcome a new child, need to care for a loved one, need safe time, or for military leave. Family was designed to be flexible, and voters understood it as a benefit that follows them rather than being attached to a single job or employer. Senate Bill 46 is a technical clarification to the text of the Family Act to ensure wage replacement benefits are calculated fairly as intended. I ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 46. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 46 is adopted. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 73.
Senate Bill 73 by Senators Van Winkle and Moreno, also Representative Michael St. concerning the continuation of the EPIC Evidence-Based Practices Implementation for Capacity Advisory Board and in connection therewith implementing the recommendations in the 2022 Sunset Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies to repeal the advisory board.
Representative Michael St.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
I move Senate Bill 73 and ask to discuss it.
To the bill.
Senate Bill 73 repeals the EPIC board. The board of directors will no longer meet. They have not been meeting since 2017, but programming still continues, and therefore the reports are still required.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
This is one of those few bills where we're actually deleting text in the statutes and repealing a board that no longer exists. Since 2020, the EPIC Center's focus has shifted outside the criminal justice arena and therefore no longer in the scope of the statute, so they no longer need to exist. And as my co-prime just said, since 2017, the board has not even met or been funded, so we might as well delete the text from statute.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 73. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 73 is adopted. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1126.
House Bill 1126 by Representative Ricks, also Senator Exum, concerning the inclusion of certain items of information in consumer reports and in connection therewith, prohibiting the reporting of medical debt information by consumer reporting agencies and prohibiting debt collectors and collection agencies from falsely representing that medical debt information will be included in a consumer report or failing to timely disclose that. With certain exceptions, medical debt will not be included in a consumer report.
Representative Ricks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1126 and the committee report.
To the committee report.
In the committee, the bill was passed unanimously.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1126. Oh, I'm sorry, I got a little excited. All right, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All of those in favor, please say aye. All of those opposed, no. All right, the ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Ricks.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So what this bill does is is a bill that stops the reporting of medical debt on consumer credit reports in Colorado. Currently, when someone cannot afford a medical expense and their bills are sent to collection, that debt, which is medical debt, may be included on their credit report. That in turn can harm the person's credit score. Banks, landlords, and some employers use credit reports and credit scores when making decisions about consumers. As a result, many people with medical debt experience barriers wherever their credit reports and credit scores are used. Medical debt, though, is not a good predictor of credit worthiness. It is something that you have to use or engage for your family when there's a medical emergency or an illness that happens. So we think that this should not be a way of them evaluating people. Now, this bill does not stop a bank from looking at medical debt. We're just saying that it does not go on the consumer credit report. And so that's what this bill does.
Representative Weinberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
Fellow colleagues, so if anybody's ever had any medical debt, you would know that it's absolutely ridiculous once it gets onto your consumer report and it affects you, affects everyone around. There's no reason for this to be on the report since it can fluctuate. You call the medical facility, you get charged $100,000 and you negotiate down to $5,000. This is a no-brainer one for me as well. Proud to be on it, and thank you, Representative Ricks, for having me.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Frizzell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
We had a lot of great testimony around this bill, and it was extremely compelling. As Representative, my esteemed colleague, mentioned, medical debt can fluctuate. It is a little unpredictable. Can be quite unpredictable. That said, it is still a financial liability. And if you're going to go and get a car loan, the bank or whatever institution you're borrowing from needs to make sure that you have the capability to repay that debt. And this bill essentially disallows that. There is very little visibility into that medical debt if one is to get another loan or maybe multiple loans. Some of the testimony that we heard was around, really heart-rending situations, like people who were not able to obtain housing because this debt showed up on their credit rating. But that said, we need to have some sort of level playing field for lenders, or else they'll just simply stop lending, or the cost of lending to the rest of us could be really high. We had asked the bill sponsors to work with the banking industry on some amendments, and I haven't heard whether that's happened or not, but we are actually preparing our own as we speak. So I just wanted to make sure that that everybody's protected here. The folks who have incurred medical debt through no fault of their own, and our lending community, who we really rely on to make sure that we can drive the cars that we want to drive, or live in the places that we want to live, or do the things that we want to do. That's what this country is kind of built on, is our ability to buy the goods we want to, how we want to, and when we want to. Thank you.
Representative Ricks.
Thank you, Rep. Frizzell, for your comments. I just want to say that already we have in the industry, credit reporting companies and consumer bureaus are already limiting medical debt. Most of them are not reporting debt under $500. And I just, again, want to reiterate that this bill does not preclude any lender or bank from using or taking into account a person's medical debt. What we're saying in this bill, and it's specifically for the Consumer Credit Bureau reportings, is that they cannot use it or show it on the credit report. So there's nothing on the loan application that stops a banker from saying, do you have medical debt? We also expect that probably there might be some cottage industries that spring up that show this debt somewhere else, but it won't be on the credit report. So we are not interfering with how people are doing their underwriting. We're just saying that we don't want it to be factored into the credit score here in Colorado.
Representative Taggart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to work with you.
Pleasure to work with you too.
My concern on this is the discussion we had in committee. And I was hoping that we were going to see some amendments coming out of committee here today from the bill sponsors. In one particular case, there was a disagreement between what the definition of medical debt was. And I know I specifically said I voted for this, but I wanted to see the proponents and opponents get together for the purpose of defining medical debt that both sides could agree to. To my knowledge, that hasn't happened. Secondly, there was discussion about whether we could, in fact, work with the credit agencies to see if they could do a credit rating with and without medical debt to help those lenders. And again, I haven't heard if those conversations have taken place. And I think I made it very clear, if that didn't come to fruition, that I could not vote yes for this when it hit the floor. Thank you.
Representative Bottoms.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to play both sides of this bill because I think it has a little bit of legitimacy, but I think there's some big red flags. So let me give the legitimacy side first. Years ago, a very young husband, father, I went to try to buy a car, and because of some medical debt, I could not buy that car. I had to buy a cheaper car because of my medical debt. I didn't try to go to the hospital. It wasn't something I intended to do, but I did do that, and so there was medical debt from that. What I get worried about is that because those are legitimate things where we want to try to offset medical debt, I mean, we know medical debt can be astronomical. So we say, well, that shouldn't be included. The problem is that is still debt. And we have to process the reality that it's still debt. And that debt, not from a credit score or a rating or something, I'm saying just real life, that's debt, and that has to be included, not from the lender's mentality, but from the borrower's mentality. That is legitimate debt. And sometimes, well, I think at every age group, but specifically younger, some of the younger generation, when they look at what can they afford, they actually look at what do they want, not what can they afford. And so I think that we have to be able to include this. This is the negative side. It has a little bit of a whiff of Fannie Mae mentality going on, that we're just going to lend to whoever, we're going to do whatever because we're not including all the debt. Well, at some point, you got to include the debt because that is real debt that somebody must pay off at some particular point. They may be able to negotiate it. I get the fluctuation of that. I've been there. I understand that. But at some particular point, you have to have a concern for the person that is lending the money, a concern for the person that is trying to, and the lender, by the way, does want somebody to accumulate debt with them. That is how lenders make money. So it's not like they're not wanting to lend, but when they see an upside down financial concept, then they're less likely to lend because they don't know for sure if that person can pay this off. And when that person defaults on this, it hurts everybody. It hurts them. It hurts their long-term credit. So we're going to argue that let's keep medical debt off of their credit rating, but their credit rating could be worse if we do that. We're actually setting them up for failure. So I think somewhere along the lines of this, and there might even be an amendment coming forward that might address some of this, but somewhere along the lines of this, we need to take a little common sense and say, okay, let's look at the full picture. What is the debt? What is the debt plus the medical debt? What are they trying to get? What is the outcome of this? And is this beneficial to everybody? It has to be beneficial to the lender. Lenders are going to be a lot more shy about this unless there's some kind of balance here. And I know that it was mentioned that this might be included, that the actual information could be included to the lending institutions, the bank, whatever. But unless we make sure of that, then the information that is going to be part of the information that the lender needs will not be included. If it directly affects the credit score, I understand that there might be a possibility that we could come up with something that says, okay, you can have 2 or 3 credit scores. You can have credit score without medical debt, credit score with medical debt, a generic, this is what the different liabilities are on that person's financial ratings without directly affecting the credit score. So I think there's a lot of things we can do here before we just go straight to keep all medical debt off of the credit score. I think it's dangerous. I think it's actually, this doesn't sound like my normal approach to the free markets, but I think it's actually more dangerous to the person trying to get the loan than it is for the lender. If the default, the lender gets to be able to push through oftentimes. The person that defaults loses a lot more, including long-term credit score, including whatever they're trying to purchase within this, a house, a car, something like that. It hinders them long-term. So I think maybe be a little bit, maybe a little more responsible in how we're processing the information, rather than an all or nothing, no medical debt on the credit score. Maybe we come up with some different ways that would be beneficial to everybody. I do know, like I said earlier, I do know what it is to have your credit score because of medical debt. I do know what that looks like to be resisted for a loan. And I was very upset at that context. So I do understand why the bill designers would bring this bill forward. I'm not arguing against that at all, actually. I agree that their motives are good with this. But we've got to still say, but that still is real debt. They still have to pay that. That still has to come to somewhere along the way when it comes to a lender addressing this. So I think I'm done here.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1126 as amended to the end of the calendar.
House Bill 1126 will be moved as requested to the end of the calendar. Mr. Schiebel? Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1172.
House Bill 1172 by Representative Parenti concerning changes to child welfare proceedings.
Representative Parenti.
Good morning, Madam Chair. It is a pleasure to serve with you.
And a pleasure to serve with you.
Thank you. I move House Bill 23-1172.
To the bill.
Thank you. Colleagues, today I am presenting to you House Bill 23-1172 concerning child welfare and juvenile court jurisdiction. This bill comes to us as a result of a multi-jurisdictional task force involving the Department of Human Services, the Office of the Child Representative, the Office of the Respondent Parents Council, and multiple city and county authorities to bring relief to children and families making their way through our juvenile court systems. By streamlining this process, by which certain types of cases and proceedings are heard, we can save children and families time, stress, and ultimately money as they seek resolution under the law. I urge your yes vote. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Holtorf.
I know, I'm good. I'm good. Madam Chair, I want to thank the bill sponsor for bringing this bill. This is good stuff. So I just want to do a shout out. When we can help our kids and our youth. Oh, I'm sorry.
There we go.
You must really want to hear what I have to say, and I'll be more than happy to share that. I'm sorry. Anyway, so I'll start over from the beginning. I want to do a shout out to the bill sponsor. I believe she brings this with the greatest of efforts to try to solve some problems in our child welfare and our juvenile court space. So I just want to thank her for that. We have a lot of problems with the judicial system. Oftentimes things aren't handled in a way that protects the victims, but rather protects criminals. But I'm not going to get into that because I don't believe in that. But this actually helps the kids and our children who oftentimes are victims to the problems in society as they try to grow up in a very complex and challenging world. So thank you for that to the bill sponsor, and shout out to my colleague across the aisle.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1172. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1172 is adopted. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 51.
Senate Bill 51 by Senators Henriksen and Sullivan, also Representative Ortiz, concerning preparation of a skilled workforce for the changing nature of work.
Representative Ortiz.
Madam Chair, I move Senate Bill 23051 and the committee report.
To the committee report.
Members, in committee, we made technical amendments that brings the state apprenticeship agency in line with the U.S. Department of Labor, the federal apprenticeship arm. That way, our apprenticeship programs are not having to apply twice to get certified. So we just made technical amendments in committee to make sure that we're in line with the federal U.S. Department of Labor standards on apprenticeship programs.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report to Senate Bill 51. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Lukens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also signed on as a co-prime to this bill. Senate Bill 23051 establishes the Office of Future Work in statute, which, in order to ensure that Colorado has the programs and infrastructure to respond to a dynamic economy. Thus, the OFW can continue to identify emerging trends, build new programs and policies to respond to Colorado's evolving economy and workforce, and support workers as they adapt to an ever-changing landscape. I ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Ortiz.
Folks, this is really about making sure that that Coloradans are prepared for any future industries that might emerge, as well as making sure that our apprenticeship programs are getting the credit and certification they need and deserve to create greater accountability and transparency, and making sure that our young Coloradans have options, whether it's through trade schools, 2-year degrees, or maybe 4-year degrees, to make sure they're prepared for the workforce of the future. Vote yes.
All right, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 51. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 51 is adopted. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 48.
Senate Bill 48 by Senators Baisley and Bridges, also Representatives Amabile and Hamrick, concerning extending the length of an employment contract for a non-tenure track appointment.
Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move the committee report and the bill for Senate Bill 48.
To the committee report.
In the committee, we made one very small change to say at a minimum, and well, we struck at a minimum. Yeah. We struck at a minimum so that they can have more flexibility with the contract lengths that they offer. I'd like to ask for a yes vote on the committee report.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. Move the bill now. Representative Amable, can you move the bill, please?
Okay.
Representative
I move
Amable.
House Bill, Senate Bill 48 and the committee report.
Do we have to do the... Okay, to the committee report.
In the committee, we struck the language at a minimum. I ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The committee report is adopted. Representative Hamrick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill increases the contract maximum for non-tenured faculty at institutes of higher learning in Colorado from 3 to 5 years. The bill stays consistent with current statutes, so the offering of contracts would remain permissive and current caveats would remain intact. This bill helps address one of the main issues instructional research and clinical faculty face, which is job security. This bill will create a positive change that will help institutions with recruitment and retention without creating a mandate. So I urge an aye vote on Senate Bill 23048.
Representative Amable.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to say, good bill. Vote yes.
That's right.
All right. Any further discussion on Senate Bill 48? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption, or the passage, I'm sorry, of Senate Bill 48. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 48 is adopted. All right, Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1025.
House Bill 1025 by Representatives Taggart and Michelson-Janae, also Senator Rich, concerning extension of charter school applications.
Representative Michelson-Janae.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1025, and I have an amendment.
Please move the committee report.
And the
please.
committee report.
Okay, thank you. To the committee report. Representative Michelson-Janae.
Oh.
Representative Michelson-Janae.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I forgot we did the amendment for rural schools that brought rural schools into support of this bill. I ask for an aye vote.
All right, is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report to House Bill 1025. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Michelson-Janae.
I move Amendment L004.
Amendment
And ask that it be
L004 has been properly moved and is displayed almost. All right, Representative Michelson-Janae to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment request came from one of our advocacy organizations, and this amendment would remove a provision that is not essential to the bill and does not add or subtract from existing district discretion, and it brings CEA to a neutral place. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L004. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Amendment L004 is adopted. To the bill. Representative Taggart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill just approaches charter school applications that have been in statute a timeline that's been 12 months, and this takes it to 18 months. Purpose of going to 18 months is it just allows both the districts as well as the applicants time to review those applications such that we're not making compromises with the opening the following August. So this moves up that timetable from what took place in the fall of each year to the spring from February 1st to April 1st. So it's just adding 6 months.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1025? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1025 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1025 as amended is adopted. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1126.
House Bill 1126 by Representative Ricks, also Senator Exum, concerning the inclusion of certain items of information in consumer reports and in connection therewith, prohibiting the report of medical debt information by consumer reporting agencies, and prohibiting prohibiting debt collectors and collection agencies from falsely representing that medical debt information be included in a consumer report or failing to timely disclose that with certain exceptions, medical debt will not be included in a consumer report.
Representative Ricks.
Okay. So we want to talk about, they need to move their amendment.
They need to move the amendment.
Right, so whoever wants to do that needs to move their amendment. Okay, they're going to move an amendment.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Frizzell.
You want to move the amendment?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I move Amendment L005 and ask for it to be properly displayed.
L005 has been properly moved and is displayed. Representative Frizzell to the amendment.
Yes, this amendment simply ensures that a borrower discloses medical debt to a lender upon request. The premise of the bill, of this bill, 1126, precludes the disclosure of medical debt on a credit report and essentially leaves the lender flying blind without the ability to understand fully if the borrower is going to be able to, in effect, fulfill their obligation. So this amendment simply, as you can see, it's an easy amendment. It just requires the borrower to disclose additional debt to a lender upon request.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just further talk about the amendment and why the amendment is needed. So if you read the amendment language, it says, notwithstanding the information that is prohibited from inclusion in a credit report, meaning medical debt, because that's what we're talking about here, a borrower shall disclose any medical debt to a lender upon request. What we're talking about here is a subsequent lender, meaning we don't want to have a situation where someone, for example, has $100,000 in medical debt and then turns around and takes out a $100,000 loan, but that creditor does not realize that they have the $100,000 in medical debt, and they have the idea that they're going to be able to make the subsequent monthly payments. That can be really frustrating. That can also lead to further challenges by the person who has the medical debt, because now all of a sudden they've built up an even greater burden of debt from their subsequent debt that they have taken on. Let's also talk about what credit scores are used for and why the bill is important, at least why I believe it's important. Credit scores are used, for example, for renting a home. They're also used for getting a job. These are, by taking medical debt out of that credit score arrangement, you no longer have a barrier to accessing the rental market. You no longer have a barrier to getting that job. You no longer have a barrier to getting into college. All the other things that require a credit report that would be a barrier, this bill takes that out, and I think that's something we support, because medical debt is something that's anticipated. But there also needs to be some safeguards for a subsequent lender to make sure that someone is not incurring a lot of debt and then further overextending themselves, and the lender would have no way of knowing what their risk was in that subsequent loan. So we ask for a yes vote.
Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did have a little bit of a sidebar with the movers of this amendment. I think I kind of see what they're getting at. I do urge a no vote on the amendment, and I want to say why, both in terms of the amendment itself and really what I think is the bigger philosophy of the bill. 1, to the amendment, just textually, shall disclose any medical debt to a lender upon request. Where are the details? Are we talking about a dollar figure or a dollar figure and a payee? Do we have to get into it was an organ transplant, it was a course of chemotherapy, whatever it could be? I think if we're going to speak statutorily in this way, we need to do so with more clarity. But backing up to the underlying issue, and which I think is important, and I appreciate the sponsor bringing it in the form of the bill, I think this amendment takes too big a bite out of that issue. Namely, medical debt is different. You know, we incur debt for a lot of reasons, all of us, to own a home, to own a car, home repairs, you know, any of a number of things. Usually in the course of incurring that debt, it's a little bit more voluntary. You know, do we stretch and try to own a home, or do we keep renting? Do we undertake debt to trade up to a new car, or do we keep driving the one we have? Things of this sort. When you are in a medical situation, there's generally not an element of voluntariness. Maybe, I don't know, illness strikes. It could be genetic, maybe not. Maybe you're in an accident. Pretty quickly you're in life and death situations. We spend a lot of time in this legislature grappling with questions of our healthcare system because it's complicated, because although it works just fine for some people, a lot of people find it doesn't work for them. So there are big bills. There are even surprises about these bills. We've done how many surprise billing type of laws over the years? So I think the premise is medical debt ought to be treated differently, because it just, in the cosmos of personal finances and life, it doesn't occupy the same role. I can choose to keep driving my old car and not go into debt to buy a new one. You know, if I slip and break my arm on ice on the sidewalk or something, I can't exactly choose to go through the next 3 months with just a broken arm. I need to get that taken care of, or a lot of worse examples that could be come up with. I think that's what the underlying bill is about. That's why I support it in the form that it came to us out of committee. It's why I do not support this amendment. I think it really vitiates what the bill is trying to do, and by allowing this medical debt to sort of be presented in parallel and separately from the report, it could actually end up doing even more harm. So I ask for a no vote.
Representative Taggart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
This amendment is helpful to both parties. And I think my colleagues have spoken to why it's helpful to a lender. But this is also helpful to us as potential borrowers. And that is, I think we've all been in a situation where we've had disputes with the billing, had disputes with our insurance company from time to time, and if the lender asks us about our medical debt, this is a perfect opportunity for us to explain that there's back and forth going on between the hospital or back and forth between ourselves and an insurance company. So I think folks are interpreting this amendment that it's one-sided just strictly for the lender, but this can be a big help to us as a borrower to explain what's going on that could help our situation. Thank you.
Minority Leader Lynch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to just expand on what my colleague said there, which is responsible lending oftentimes takes the form of helping a consumer who may not know the predicament they're about to get themselves in. This amendment allows lenders to be responsible, allows lenders to do the right thing for folks that may not take into consideration that they're going to be in a world of hurt if they take on this additional debt without knowing that they've got this looming medical debt in there. So I think this is a good amendment, and I would encourage a yes vote.
Representative Frizzell.
You know, I mentioned earlier that we heard in committee some really amazing, courageous testimony, and about some horrible things that happen to people that, from a medical standpoint, that they carried that debt with them for years and years and years and years, and their whole life was changed. And that was very compelling. It was certainly eye-opening, because I personally never really had an understanding of the impact of this type of debt. But here's the thing. You pay interest rates on a loan based on the perceived risk of the lender. If you have a lower credit rating, your interest rate's probably a little higher. If you have a great credit rating, maybe your interest rate's a little bit lower. My concern, and one reason why this amendment is so important, is that I worry that if lenders feel that they're exposed to risk across the board, that it's going to raise the cost of lending for all of us. It's going to increase our cost to borrow money, or borrow money to buy a car, to buy a house, to pay for your kids' tuition, to remodel your basement. It's going to impact all of us because lenders won't understand what the real risk is on any loan that they borrow on. Please vote yes on this amendment. It's a good amendment.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This particular amendment's a good amendment. Let's be honest. When lenders and financiers have to consider lending the resources that they have to the consumers that have the financial needs, they need to have a clear picture of what those are. This amendment allows for, at their request, not in every case, but at their request, the disclosure of that. Now let's go back in time. Let's go back in time to the Clinton administration in this country. And I'm not going to pick on any president or their party affiliation. I'm just going to talk about conditions we create that cause huge financial problems by this type of legislation. In those years, because the administration wanted to promote homeownership at the highest level, because that is the American dream, policy decisions were made to relax the requirements that bankers had for analyzing risk. The standards were changed. The thresholds were lowered so more people could get into homes. Now, when this happened, the mortgage market proliferated. There were mortgage companies popping up everywhere in America. They were like corner convenience stores. Even out in eastern Colorado, they were showing up because now the mortgage market started taking off. Because everybody now, and many people that previously were not eligible for a loan, could obtain a home loan. And the market reacted. Now, as the story goes, this did not end up with a happy ending. But let me continue with the story because it's relevant, because it parallels exactly what this amendment is trying to promote in avoiding problems in lending. Now, the mortgage companies wrote the loans. They offered them to banks and other financial institutions who quickly picked up on those financial instruments and that commercial paper, that debt. And I'm not a banker. I'm just a cowpoke from eastern Colorado. There's some people that have worked in banking here that could probably talk much more eloquently than I can about this. But I watched this show, and I shook my head. And I just said, how could we do this? How could we let this happen? Now, as those banks and the investment institutions bought this paper, they did something else. They bundled it. They bundled the mortgage loans, and then they resold those bundles. This might be 100 mortgages or more all across the country on loans written that had relaxed and reduced collateral requirements, banking and financial thresholds, and even income
Representative Holtorf,
requirements.
we're not talking about mortgage loans. Can you keep it to the bill, please?
I will get back to the bill. But the point is, with this amendment, banks can now see a true picture of collateralization, of loan indebtedness, and it doesn't artificially relax or obfuscate or hide an indebtedness. And those credit reports need to accurately reflect the financial position of a prospective borrower. Banks and companies use this as a measure. But now we're trying to take this element out of it. Now, getting back to the story, as these things were bundled, then they created a derivative market. And that derivative market went worldwide. Now, everything was fine, and I'm going to get to my point here. You really need to pay close attention to this. Everything was fine until we had a market downturn. And then all those questionable loans on mortgages that maybe should have never been written couldn't be paid. Now, this just didn't happen with a few mortgages. This happened literally in hundreds of thousands of instances.
Representative Holtorf, to
Yes.
the bill, please.
Absolutely.
To the amendment, I'm sorry.
To the amendment. So in this particular case, everything was fine. But once the payments weren't made because we changed the standards for banking, which is what you might do with this bill here, that this amendment is trying to help correct. You see, this amendment, at the request of the lender, allows them to take another consideration in on the ability to repay. Because it's all about lending money in good faith and having the ability to repay. That's what business is about and lending is about. But this takes, you might have a $100,000 medical bill. Or more. That you're trying to adjudicate, negotiate. You're trying to settle. With this bill, that gets masked and just covered up. Nope, you can't look at that one because the state of Colorado said so. With this amendment, Madam Chair, to the amendment, that masking doesn't happen at the request of the lender. Now, some lenders are going to say, you know what, we really don't need that. So the bill actually helps the consumer. But in those lenders that say, you know, we want to check into this, and I'm a pro-business legislator, and I care about capital in markets, particularly in this case, Consumer reports that what? Maybe for a condominium or an apartment purchase or a vehicle purchase or whatever other purchase you have in that consumer market. Number one, I disagree with the fact that you should be able to obfuscate any liability or debt. I think that's wrong for whatever reason, social or otherwise. But this amendment opens that door for the lenders and the bankers. So what? So in this story, when the mortgage revenues on those derivatives stopped coming in, and the financial and investment companies said, wait a minute, where's my money? And then those investment vehicles failed, and then the derivative companies started failing. And then what happened, ladies and gentlemen? Now, this goes to the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to say. Now we have a Republican president, and that was President Bush at the time.
Representative Holtorf.
Yes.
To the amendment, please.
Certainly. If you pay attention to this story, you'll see why this is a good amendment and how we shouldn't pass this bill without this amendment. Because as the story goes, when borrowers cannot pay for whatever reason, oh wait, somebody taking a picture here. You got it? Okay, that's good. Did I stand tall? Okay, just want to make sure I was smiling. I always smile on the inside, Madam Chair, for those of you that know me really well. I'm always smiling on the inside by the blessings from heaven.
It's very nice.
But getting back to this particular point here, if we create conditions in the market that don't accurately reflect the borrower's ability to pay, by legislation like this, without amendments like this, we potentially could have a very unfortunate outcome. Now, I know everybody in this building was in the recession of 2008, and boy, it caught the country like you catch a badger. Who in here has actually rolled and caught a badger with their hands?
Representative Holtorf.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's talk about the amendment, not badgers.
Yes,
thank you.
Anyway, I've never done it, but I've seen it done by my redneck friends. But to this amendment right here, I just want to point out, this kind of amendment right here helps solve a potential problem. So when we catch that badger, it doesn't turn around and bite your hand off. I'm telling you, because of what might happen without having that picture, there may be people that get over encumbered and then they don't have the ability to repay because they don't get the settlement or the outcome on the medical debt that they wanted. So I'm in strong favor of this amendment for the reasons that I mentioned, and they're sincere and honest. We've got to be very careful with policy when we start to interject these things that change lenders' ability to see the true liability of borrowers, that mask or obfuscate or hide certain elements of this. And that's what this bill does, but this is what this amendment will make sure that at the lender's request, then they have the ability to make those decisions on their own with this particular option. That, Madam Chair, is why I'm in favor of this amendment, and also why I've told this story. Not to waste people's time, but to try to open our eyes to what can happen if we get too carried away with the policies that we promote. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Ricks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I rise in opposition to this amendment, and I want to say that lenders should not be exempted from protections that protect private consumer information. The federal government, who is like the largest lender in America, and has determined that there is no need to use medical debt to make sound lending decisions. We just heard about the mortgage industry. Over 12% of new home purchases are made through FHA loans. Currently, the federal government does not look at medical debt in making those considerations for those loans. So respectfully, if the federal government, one of the largest lenders in the country, has deemed medical information unnecessary in their lending decisions, private lenders don't need to be exempted from these important protections. In addition, Vantage, which is a consumer reporting company, and one of the country's largest, by the way, in credit score providing, they recently eliminated consideration of medical debt from their newest scoring models. So you're seeing that there is a going away in the industry from using medical debt, and credit in Colorado will be right in line. I also take exception to this amendment because it doesn't fit into the title. The title addresses specifically consumer bureaus, credit bureaus, and not lenders. So I'm going to respectfully ask for a no vote on this.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L005? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L005. All those in favor? Okay, division has been called and will be recognized. We're going to take a brief recess. The committee will come back to order. The question is the adoption of Amendment L005. A division has been requested. All those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please be seated. All those in favor of Amendment L005, please stand and remain standing or raise your hand and keep it raised until the vote or until the count is taken. You may be seated. All those opposed, please stand or raise your hand and remain standing in one place until the vote count is taken. You may be seated. Amendment L005 is lost. Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1126? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1126. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. House Bill 1126 is adopted. Madam Majority Leader Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
You've heard the motion. Seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report.
The House will come to order. Mr. Schiebel, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Madam Speaker, your Committee of the Whole begs leave to report it has under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof and making the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1025 is amended, 1126 is amended, 1172 passed on second reading and ordered, engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 46, 48 is amended, 51 is amended, 73 passed on second reading and ordered, revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Representative Wilford. Members, you have heard the motion. There are amendments at the desk. Mr. Schiebel, please read the Soper amendment to the Committee of the Whole.
Representatives Soper and Frizzell move to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Soper and Frizzell amendment L5 to House Bill 1126 to show that said amendment passed and that House Bill 1126 as amended passed.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, it's important that we reverse the action of the Committee of the Whole here, because it's also very important that if you have a subsequent lender who's lending out money, that a borrower does not get overextended and into a situation that's a worse financial situation than they're already in. And it's very important that lenders know the risk, that they're able to assess that before loaning out money. We would ask for a yes vote on this amendment.
And Representative Soper, can I have you move the amendment?
Oh, thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the Soper and Frizzell amendment to the Committee of the Whole report and ask that it be displayed.
It is properly displayed. Thank you. Representative Frizzell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
This is a very important measure that we are discussing today. It will influence the cost of lending for all Colorado citizens. This will make a difference to every person in this state trying to get a loan for a car, a house, a condo, finishing their basement, putting an addition on, buying their kid their first automobile. I mean, it's a long list. Lenders look at this information as they should because they're in the business of lending. That's their livelihood. This puts a big risk for all private lenders and lending institutions in the state of Colorado. It tells them, we don't want your business. Please vote yes on this amendment.
Representative Ricks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of the Soper amendment to the Committee of the Whole report. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 19 aye, 44 no, and 2 excused, the Soper amendment is lost. There are no further amendments at the desk. The question before us is the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 45 aye, 18 no, and 2 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to proceed out of order for consideration of Senate amendments to House bills.
Members, you have heard the motion to proceed out of order. Seeing no objection, we will move forward with the Senate amendments to House bills. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1045.
House Bill 1045 by Representative Evans, also Senators Pelton B. and Henriksen, concerning leave from employment for state military service.
Representative Evans.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House concur in the Senate amendments to House Bill 1045.
There is a first for everything in the House, isn't there? Don't worry, Representative Evans, that's a ritual within the House. Not about you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Having been educated about some of the customs of this chamber, I move that the House concur in Senate amendments to House Bill 1045. The amendment, it really just brings an additional part of the bill in compliance with USERRA, which is the federal law governing how service members returning from an extended length of absence are reemployed by their employer. So it's a good amendment, and vote yes.
Thank you, Representative Evans. Members, the motion before us is to concur with the Senate amendments on House Bill 1045. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 62 ayes, 0 no, and 3 excused, the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 1045 is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move for the repassage of House Bill 1045 as amended.
Members, you've heard the motion. If there's no further discussion, the question before the House is the repassage of House Bill 1045 as amended. Please open the machine, members, and proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 62 ayes, 0 no, and 3 excused, House Bill 1045 is repassed as amended. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1071.
House Bill 1071 by Representatives Amabile and Bradfield, also Senators Simpson and Fenberg, concerning the authority of a licensed psychologist to prescribe psychotropic medication for the treatment of mental health disorders.
Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to move House Bill 1071 and ask for concurrence with Senate amendments.
Representative Evans, do you feel better now? Excellent. Representative Bradfield.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We are thrilled that all of the Senate could come together and have a 35-0 vote for this bill. They did ask for 4 different changes to the original bill, and then we'd like to share those with you at this time. Take the first one.
Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So we removed APRNs from being able to supervise prescribing psychologists during their practicum.
Representative Bradfield.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And also, they want to clarify that either as a part of or prior to enrolling in a master's in psychopharmacology, prescribing psychologists need to have received instruction in the various basic sciences, including biology, anatomy, physiology, etc.
Representative Amabile.
It enhances the collaborative relationship between a prescribing psychologist and a physician.
Representative Bradfield.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And lastly, the amendment added language to ensure prescribing psychologists follow under the PDMP. And we ask for a yes vote.
Representative Amabile.
Good bill vote, yes.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is to concur with the Senate amendments on House Bill 1071. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 59 aye, 3 no, and 3 excused, House Bill 1071, as amended, is motion to concur with Senate amendments on House Bill 1071 is adopted. Thank you. Now we have to do this again. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move for the repassage of House Bill 1071 as amended.
Members, you've heard the motion. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine for the repassage of House Bill 1071. Please close the machine. With 57 aye, 5 no, and 3 excused, House Bill 1071 is repassed as amended. Co-sponsors. Please. Now please close the machine. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar until tomorrow.
Seeing no objection, the balance of the calendar will be laid over until tomorrow. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until later today.
Seeing no objection, the House will stand in recess until later today.